Hey everyone! Today I'm going to show you how to crochet Bella the cow. Her peaceful nature and gentle presence make her a beloved figure among all the farm animals. So she can be made in sport, DK, or plush weight yarn by adjusting your hook size. Today I'll be crocheting with worsted weight yarn and a 4mm crochet hook. If you haven't already, be sure to snag the matching greeting card to make an adorable and one-of-a-kind gift that your friends and family will love. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Alright, so we are starting on the body and head, and we're going to be using this white colored yarn, and the first thing that we need to do is get a magic ring formed. So let's go ahead and review how to tie a magic ring. Alright, so let's review how to form a magic ring. So we're going to start by taking a little length of our yarn, and I'm using white for this demonstration. Make sure you're using the correct color for the pattern that you are following along with. So I'm going to take this white, and I'm going to reserve myself a little bit of a tail. So I'm going to take the end of that yarn and I'm going to stretch it so I've got about 5 inches or so of a tail. And the tail is going to be the end that is not attached to our ball of yarn. So once we've got about 5 inches or so reserved of that tail, we're going to take our yarn hand. For me, that's my left hand, but if you're a left-handed crocheter, this might be your right hand. But we're going to take our yarn hand and make a bit of a finger guns here. So my index and my middle finger, I'm going to put them together, and I'm going to be looking at the inside of them. Then I'm going to take that tail that I've reserved, that 5 inches, and I'm going to lay it so that it's over the lower digit on my index and my middle. And then I'll take my thumb and I'm going to press the yarn to those two fingers. Then I'm going to take my hook hand, which is for me my right hand, but could be your left hand, and I'm going to grab the working yarn. Once I've got that grabbed, I'll take it and I'm going to wrap it around the back side of my index and my middle finger so that it's sort of close to that top digit. I'll flip my hand over so you can see. So I want it to be close to my top digit, so you can see it's closer to the two tops of my fingers here. So we're going to wrap that around, and then once we've got it around the top digit of those two fingers, we're going to bring it so that it goes behind our thumb again. So I use my thumb and I pinch that second wrap in place. Then we're going to keep wrapping, this time going around the lower digit on our two fingers. So I'll flip my hand over so you can see these two wraps here. This is that one I just made, going around that lower digit. So we'll wrap around that lower digit, and then we're going to take our working yarn and one more time snug it behind our thumb, and then just pull it out of our way. So once we've done that, we should have two wraps and this sort of X shape on the insides of our hands. So once we have all of the yarn wrapped around our yarn hand here, we're ready to take our crochet hook in our hook hand, and we're going to flip our yarn hand over so that we're looking at the back side of our fingers. So we should have two wraps, one around the top digit, one around the lower digit on our yarn hand. We're going to take our hook and slip it underneath that top wrap, and then use the hook part to snag that lower wrap and bring it underneath the top wrap. Then we're going to take both of our hands and we're going to flip them over so that we're looking at the inside and away from our body. So I'm flipping out and away from my body. And then I'm going to bring my two hands together, so my yarn hand and my hook hand. I'm going to bring them so the index finger here on my hook hand can touch the back side of my yarn hand. Then using the thumb and index finger of my hook hand, I'm going to grab both the wrap on my hook and the wrap still on my fingers right where they meet. So I'm going to kind of snag the two of them together right there. Once I've got those pinched between my thumb and index finger on my hook hand, I can let go with my thumb and then gently slide those wraps off of my index and middle finger. So now that I've done that, let's locate both the tail, that's the end that's no longer attached to our ball of yarn, so it's got this blunt cut end on it. And we're going to kind of pull that over into the 12 o'clock position, so kind of up and away. And then let's locate the working yarn. That's the stuff still attached to our ball of yarn. So once we've got those two identified, we're going to take the working yarn and begin tensioning it. So to do that, we'll take our index finger on our yarn hand. That for me is my left hand. Could be your right hand for you if you're a left-handed crocheter. And we're going to slip the working yarn over the top of our index finger. Then we'll take our middle, ring, and pinky finger on our yarn hand, and we're going to wrap those around that working yarn. Once you've done that, we also need to sandwich this working yarn in between our magic ring and our tail. So to do that, I like to take my middle finger and thumb on my yarn hand, and I'm going to grab that tail with my middle finger here. And then with my thumb, I want to grab the ring. So we don't want to grab our working yarn, which is kind of going in through that ring. We want to just get the bottom end of the ring here. And once you've got those two, we're going to kind of pinch them together. And you can see that sandwiches our working yarn in between the two of them. Once we've got those grabbed with our yarn hand, we can let go with our index and thumb on our hook hand. And the ring here that's on our hook is really loose. We'll tighten that by pulling our index finger up and away. You can see how that tightens that yarn. And then once we've done that, we're ready to yarn over and draw through the loop on our hook. So we'll take our hook, put the yarn over our hook. So I kind of just swing around the back side there and grab it. And we're going to pull that working yarn directly through the loop on our hook. Once we've done that, you can let go. It's not going to come undone. It won't come untied, which is very comforting because we've spent all this time creating it. The last thing we need to do before we're ready to begin is we're going to take the tail, and you can see it's threaded through our magic ring. We're going to take that tail and we're going to pull it out from the center of that ring. And from here, we're ready to begin working in the magic ring. We also need to work over the tail as well. So we'll take that ring and we'll take the tail and we're going to set them together so that we are working over both of these strands, the ring and the tail. All right, you are ready to go ahead and continue on in your pattern. Alright, so now that we have our magic ring formed, we're ready to start in on round 1. And for round 1, we need to put 7 single crochet stitches inside of the magic ring. So when we work in our magic ring, we need to work in both the ring and over the tail that we use to tie the ring. So to make our first single crochet stitch, we're going to take our crochet hook and go through the ring and also underneath that tail. Then we're going to yarn under, so we're going to put the yarn underneath our crochet hook and use that hook to grab the yarn and pull it through the ring and up into a nice tall loop here on our crochet hook. Then to finish the single crochet stitch, we'll yarn over, so we're going to put the yarn over our crochet hook and then draw that yarn through the 2 loops left on our crochet hook. And that forms our first single crochet stitch. We also need to mark this first stitch as it's the first stitch of our round and it'll help us keep track of where we are in our pattern. So I've just slipped my stitch markers through the stitch to mark it. And then we need to continue creating single crochet stitches just like how we made our first one until we have 7 stitches total. So again, we'll take our crochet hook, go through that loop and underneath the tail, yarn under and draw through the loop, then yarn over and draw through the 2 loops on our hook. And that forms our second single crochet stitch. We're going to keep adding single crochet stitches until we have 7 of them total. So here's my 4th. Here's number 5. 6 And one more. Alright, so you can double check that you have the correct amount of stitches by turning your work on the side. And our first stitch is marked, so counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And we don't count the loop on our hook as a stitch. Alright, when you have all 7 single crochet stitches, you can take the tail from the magic ring and pull it tightly to close off round 1, and it sets us up for round 2. So round 2, we need to put 1 increase in each of the 7 stitches from round 1, and our first stitch is marked for us, so where that stitch marker is, that's where we're going to be putting our crochet hook. So we're going to go ahead and take that marker out, and then we'll make our increase in that stitch it was just in by taking our hook and pushing it through the top of that stitch, the little V shape. Then we'll make our single crochet stitch just like we did in our magic ring by yarning under and drawing through the stitch itself, and then yarning over and drawing through those 2 loops left on my crochet hook. Then that new stitch that we just made, we need to mark. And then to finish our increase, we need to go through that same stitch from round 1, the one that our first single crochet stitch is in, and place a second single crochet stitch. So you can see I have 2 stitches coming out of the same one stitch from the previous round. So that increase is done. I need to go to the next stitch of the round and add a second increase. So there's the first half. I'll go through that same stitch again. And there's my second increase. I'm going to continue increasing until I have 14 stitches total at the end of round 2. Alright, so there's my last increase for round 2. Before I move on to round 3, I'm going to give my magic ringtail one final pretty tight tug, and then I'm going to flip my work over and then use my scissors to trim the magic ringtail short, but not all the way off. You can discard whatever it is that you trimmed, and that will keep our magic ringtail out of our way as we continue working around. Alright, so we're ready for round 3. In round 3 we have a set of parentheses here at the front part of our instructions. And what that's telling us is that we need to do everything inside of them in the order that they appear, the amount of times indicated outside of the parentheses. So that pattern of 1 single crochet stitch, 1 increase, we're going to repeat it in that order 7 times for round 3, which is going to give us 21 stitches when we're all done. So let's give that a try. We'll take our stitch marker out and then put the first part of that instruction in that first stitch, so 1 single crochet stitch, then mark that, and then in the next stitch of the round we'll put 1 increase. So remember, that's when we put 2 stitches in the same stitch from the previous round. So there's that increase. And that's 1 repeat of that parentheses pattern. So we need to repeat that 6 more times. 1 single crochet stitch, 1 increase, and that will take us all the way around this round and give us 21 stitches total. So 1 single crochet stitch, 1 increase, there's that second repeat, 1 single crochet stitch, 1 increase, Alright, so I just made the last increase there for round 3, and I'm ready to work round 4. So round 4, we're going to be adding in a new color after we do our parentheses pattern 2 times. So let's go ahead and grab the black colored yarn that we're going to be using and get it ready. Alright, so I've got my black yarn on standby and I'm ready to start in on round 4. So we're still going to be using white. We're going to put 1 single crochet stitch in the next 2 stitches of our round. So there are those first 2 single crochet stitches, followed by an increase. So there's 1 repetition of that parentheses pattern, 1 single crochet stitch, 1 single crochet stitch, increase. We need to do that a second time, but in our second increase, we're going to be changing colors. So 1 single crochet stitch, 1 single crochet stitch, increase, and I'm going to stop on the second single crochet stitch of the increase. So I'm going to go through, yarn under and draw up a loop, but I need to pull through these 2 loops here with my new color. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to set this down, grab my new color, which is black, and I like to take the new color and sort of pinch it over on itself so that it has a little tail and forms a little loop here, and then draw this loop through the 2 loops left of that last single crochet stitch in my increase. Then we're going to take the black tail that we've got left behind, and we're going to hold it behind our work with the white that's still attached. And we need to take these with us as we make our next couple of stitches. So the next stitch that we're going to make is going to be in black, but this is going to be the only black stitch in this round. So I'm going to take my hook and I'm going to go through the next stitch, and then I'm going to lay both the black and the white, so the tail from the black and the white that's still attached, over my crochet hook. Then I'm going to yarn under and draw up a nice tall loop. And then I need to finish this single crochet stitch off in white. So I'm going to drop the black behind my work, grab my white, and then yarn over and draw through in white. Then in the next stitch of the round, I'm in white now, I'm going to place a second single crochet stitch. I'm going to lay the tail from the black over my hook as well, and leave the black that's attached behind my work here. Make 1 single crochet stitch here in white, and then I'm going to make 1 increase, still working that black tail in as I go. So I'll work that tail in 1 last time. And here's the second single crochet stitch of my increase. Then we worked this black tail in far enough, we can go ahead and trim it short. Discard what we trimmed. Then we're going to continue working the rest of this round with that same parentheses pattern that we started with. So 2 single crochet stitches followed by 1 increase, and we'll repeat that 3 more times. Alright, that's my last stitch of round 4, and I'm ready for round 5. So we're going to start by putting 1 single crochet stitch in the next 3 stitches of the round. Followed by 1 increase. And we're going to do that a second time, but just like with the last round, the last single crochet stitch of our increase, we need to change to the color black. So 3 single crochet stitches, then 1 increase, and here's the second part of my increase. So I'm going to grab the black that's still behind my work here and yarn over and draw it through those 2 loops left and drop the white behind my work. Then we're going to make 3 single crochet stitches in black, and we're going to take the white with us as we go. So I'll go through that first black single crochet stitch, lay my white over my hook, and make 1 single crochet stitch, go through the next, lay my white over my hook, make my second single crochet stitch, and then this last one we're going to pull through the last part of our stitch with our white. So drop our black behind, grab the white, yarn over with it and draw it through. And there are those 3 single crochet stitches in black with the black drop behind our work. So then we need to make 1 increase, and then 3 single crochet stitches, and we're going to repeat that 3 more times. So 1 increase, 3 single crochet stitches. Alright, so there are those last 3 single crochet stitches, and then in the last stitch of the round I'm going to increase. And that wraps up round 5, so I'm ready for round 6. So round 6 I'm going to start by putting 1 single crochet stitch in the next 4 stitches of the round. Then follow that with 1 increase. So we'll repeat that pattern a second time. 4 single crochet stitches, followed by 1 increase, then I need to make 1 single crochet stitch here in white, but I need to finish it with black. So I'm going to go through this black single crochet stitch from the previous round, make most of a white single crochet stitch and then drop the white behind, grab the black that's still attached here at the back, and draw it through. And if you look, the black's going to kind of leave a little tail behind our work, so be careful not to pull that too tightly or it'll mess with the tension on the front of the work here. So I've got the white dropped behind, and I'm going to make the next 3 single crochet stitches in black. So go through my next stitch, lay my white over my hook. There's my first, and my second, and then 1 more, but this time I need to pull through with the white, and we're done with the black here, so we're going to fasten it off by trimming a short tail, 4 to 6 inches or so, there of the black. Then we're going to pull through this single crochet stitch in white, and then we need to weave this black tail in for the next few stitches of our round. So we're going to make 1 increase in the next stitch, lay that black tail over our hook, so there's that increase, and then 1 single crochet stitch in the next 4 stitches, Alright, so I've woven that tail in for those 4 single crochet stitches. I'm going to trim it short, and and discard what I trimmed. And the rest can just stay behind on the back side of our work. So I've made those 4 single crochet stitches, so I've done 1 repetition of that parentheses pattern. I'm going to repeat that another 3 times, so 1 increase, then 1 single crochet stitch in the next 4 stitches of the round. Alright, so there are those 4 single crochet stitches, and then the last thing we need to do in this round is place 1 increase. And then we're ready for round 7 through 9. So round 7 through 9, we're going to be working 1 single crochet stitch in the back loops of every stitch all the way around. So to work in the back loop, we've been working in both loops of our stitch so far. For all of the stitches in rounds 7, 8, and 9, we're going to want to just work in the back loops of every crochet stitch. So you can see I'm pulling up the back loops here with my yellow yarn needle. The back loop is the loop closest to the back side of our work, the one with the magic ring tail and the black tails. We're going to be working in just this loop for every stitch in round 7, 8, and 9. So I'll go ahead and take my stitch marker out. And to grab the back loop, we're going to take our hook and push it between the top part of that stitch here. So rather than going through and under like we have been, we're going to just grab the back loop of the stitch, then make our single crochet stitch like normal, and of course mark that first stitch. And then we're just going to continue working in those back loops, putting 1 single crochet stitch in each one for rounds 7, 8, and 9. So don't forget, at the beginning of each round, you need to move your stitch marker up to the first stitch to keep track of where you are. And I will see you back here when we are ready to make round 10. Alright, so I just finished the last single crochet stitch in the back loop for round 9, and I'm ready for round 10. So round 10, we're going to be putting 1 single crochet stitch in every stitch, so we're working not in the back loops anymore. So just 1 single crochet stitch in each stitch all the way around. Alright, that's round 10 done, so I'm ready for round 11, and we're back in the back loop only for round 11. So 1 single crochet stitch in each of the back loops all the way around. Alright, so there is the last single crochet stitch in the back loop for round 11, and I need to place my eyes next, so I'm going to take the loop on my hook and pull my hook so it draws that loop really long, and then take my crochet hook out. And then we need to add the safety eyes. So first let's kind of turn our work so that that black patch that we have is sort of over here on the right hand side. And our safety eyes are going to go along this round here. So let's go ahead and get those eyes ready to go. So a quick note, if Bella is going to be for a young child or for a pet, you may want to embroider on the eyes instead. But if not, we're good to go ahead and get our safety eyes placed. So I'm going to be using these. And they're going to be placed between rounds 3 and 4. And they're going to be about 4 stitches apart. So our magic ring is our first round. So 1, 2, 3. So between round 3 and 4, I'll go ahead and place my first eye. And then our second eye is going to be closer to this black patch that we have here. So that's about 4 stitches apart from this one. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I just pushed both of the eyes through the fabric between rounds 3 and 4. And you can of course adjust these eyes and move them wherever you'd like, but if you're happy with their placement, we're ready to snap the little plastic backs onto the back side of them. So we'll just take the little plastic back and push it onto the stem of the eye until it snaps. And we'll repeat on the other eye. That gets them locked in place onto the fabric of our work. So then we can take our crochet hook, reinsert it into that loop we drew up long, and pull our tail or pull our working yarn to draw that loop back down. And we're ready for round 12. So for round 12, we're back in the regular stitch, so not just the back loop. And we're going to start by placing one single crochet stitch in the next 4 stitches of the round. And then we need to make a decrease. So to do the decrease, we're going to go through our next stitch in the round, yarn under, and draw up a loop. And then we're going to repeat that in the stitch right after where we just went through. So the next stitch of the round, we're going to go in, yarn under, and draw up a loop. And then to finish our decrease, we're going to yarn over and draw through all 3 of the loops left on our crochet hook. And that takes 2 of the stitches from the last round and decreases them into 1 stitch for this round. So we're going to repeat that same sequence of 1 single crochet stitch in the next 4 stitches of the round. And then 1 decrease. We'll repeat it 7 times total to wrap up round 12. Alright, so that's round 12 done for me. Round 13, we're back in the back loop only. So we're going to put 1 single crochet stitch in the next 3 back loops. And then we're going to make a back loop only decrease, which is just like the decrease that we made last round, but instead of going through the whole stitch, we're just going to be going through the back loop. So we'll go through that first back loop, go through the next back loop, and then yarn over and draw through all 3 of those loops. And then we're going to repeat that pattern of 3 single crochet stitches followed by a decrease 7 times total all the way around this round. Alright, so there was my last decrease, and I'm ready for round 14. We're back in the regular front and back loop of each stitch, and we're going to start by putting 1 single crochet stitch in the next 2 stitches of the round. And then 1 decrease. And we're going to repeat that sequence 7 times total all the way around this round. Alright, so that is round 14 done. Round 15, I'm back in the back loops only. I'm going to put 1 single crochet stitch in the first back loop. And then 1 back loop decrease. Then repeat that pattern 7 times total all the way around this round. Alright, so there is that last back loop only decrease. Before I make the last round, which is round 16, I'm going to stuff the body. So I'm going to take this loop on my hook, and just like when we put the eyes on, draw it long, take my hook out. Then I'm going to add some stuffing to the inside of the body at this point. Alright, so I have the body stuffed and I'm ready to make this last round of single crochet stitches. And we're going to be in the back loops, and we're going to make 7 back loop only decreases all the way around this round. Alright, Alright, so there was my last back loop only decrease there for round 16, and I'm ready to fasten off. So I'm going to take this slip stitch out. So I'm going to take the stitch marker out, and we need to make a slip stitch in the stitch that marker was just in. So to do that, we're going to go through both the front and back loop of that next stitch, yarn over, and draw through that stitch, and then draw the loop we just created through the only other loop left on our crochet hook. Then we're ready to continue fastening off by cutting a tail to sew with. So reserve yourself 6 to 8 inches or so, and then trim your tail. And then we're going to take our crochet hook and pull that slip stitch until the tail we cut passes through it as well. And then pull that tail to tighten our slip stitch. Then we're going to sew through the 7 front loops of these decreases that we made to close off our work. So we'll take the tail that we've just cut, thread it through the eye of our yarn needle, and then we're going to sew through just the front loops of these 7 decreases that we made. So if you look, our stitches have sort of turned themselves on their sides a little bit. So the front loop is even easier to grab. It's this loop here closest to the surface of our work. So we'll slip our needle underneath and pull until the tail goes all the way through. Then rotate, sew through the next stitch. And we're going to do that 7 times total, 1 in each of those front loops from the 7 decreases that we made. Alright, once you've sewn through all 7 of those front loops, you can pull our tail, which will cinch that round closed. Then to keep that round secured, we're going to make a surface knot by looping our tail over the surface of our work. So you can see I made like a little O shape here with my tail. Then I'm going to sew down into some of the fabric right where that O begins and up through the O that we've made. And then I'm going to pull that tail, and that ring that we've formed is going to tighten itself around the tail, forming a knot. And then we're going to weave this tail in by sewing down through where we cinched that last round closed, and then along the inside of the body and out through a random stitch here on the surface. And that's going to pull the knot to the inside and weave the tail in. Once we've done that, we can unthread our yarn needle, and by pulling that tail tightly and trimming it close to the fabric of the work, we'll weave the tail in. We can discard any that we didn't weave in, and that closes up the body. Alright, so now we are ready to start adding on the hair detail here onto Bella. So first we need to locate round 7's back loops that are left behind. So if you kind of go where the eyes are and then turn, you can see where the spiral begins right here. And we're going to take our crochet hook, and we actually need to look at it so that the eyes are facing down. We're going to insert our crochet hook through that loop left on the surface of our work. So I'm going to take my hook and just push through. And then we need to join our black yarn here. So I'm going to grab my black, and just like I did when we made a color change here on this patch, I'll make a little loop. So I'm going to pinch, make a loop, and then pull that loop through. And then I'm going to take the tail and I'm going to pull it through the loop that I just put onto my hook. And then keep pulling that loop that I have on my crochet hook until the tail passes through, and then tighten. So that sort of ties a knot and gets the black fastened on. We will need to come back and weave this tail in, but then we can take our hook and go back through that loop. And we're ready to begin this pattern here of making the hair. So we're always going to be chaining 4 and then slip stitching into the next 2 loops when we do this. So we need to do this 3 times total with our black before we switch to the white. So we're going to start by chaining 4 stitches. So we're going to yarn over, there's our first, we'll yarn over again. Here's my second chain, third, and fourth. And then in the next 2 loops left behind on the body, we're going to add a slip stitch. So we're going to go through that next loop, yarn over and draw through, and then draw through to slip stitch, and we'll make a second slip stitch. Then we need to do that again, so chain 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then make 2 more slip stitches. And then chain 4, and then make 2 more slip stitches. And then with the second slip stitch, we need to join our white. So we're going to trim our black. So we're going to cut a tail here with the black yarn. And then we'll take our white, make a little loop, pull through the fabric of the work, and through the loop on our hook. And then we need to draw this short tail of the white through our loop here, and then tighten. So there's another tail. We're going to have to weave this tail in too as we go. We're going to have to weave this tail in and this black tail in. We'll do all of that at the end though. So we'll go back through that loop, and then we need to chain 4 and do 2 slip stitches, one in the next 2 loops here. And we're going to be making 8 of these in white. So there's our first. All right, so here's my last chain 4. So this is my 8th one. I'm going to do the next 2 slip stitches. But then I need to switch to black here for this last slip stitch. So I'm going to go through, then I'm going to trim the white, and then pull through this last slip stitch here with black. And then take that tail again and pass it through and tie a knot. Okay, and then I'm ready to start the next black patch here. So I'll chain 4. Then I'm going to make 2 slip stitches. And I'll make my second chain 4. There's only 2 for this next black patch. Make my first slip stitch. And then trim the black. And then reattach the white. So we'll go through the next slip stitch, or the next loop here on our front loop of our body. Attach that white. And then draw the white tail through the loop we just made to attach. Then go back through that same loop and chain 4. And then again, we're going to be making 8 of these little strands. So here's my first. I'll slip stitch in the next 2. Alright, so here's my last chain 4 on the white for this section. I'm going to slip stitch in the first. And then we're going to move on to our next black section, so trim the white. Make a little loop and slip stitch through the next loop here on our body with black. And then draw the tail from fastening on through the loop we just made and tighten it down. Alright, so our next black section, we're going to be making 3 of these strands. So chain 4, slip stitch, and then in that last slip stitch here on the surface of the body, we'll need to switch back to white. And we're going to be making 9 of these strands in white this time around. So you can see we're getting ready to kind of start in on the next round here of those loops left on the surface of the work. So we're going to be making 9 of these chain 4 strands in white. Alright, so here I am on my last white strand from that 9. So I'll make my next 2 slip stitches with that second one being drawn through in black. So we'll trim. Right, we're going to make 2 strands in black now. So 4 chain, 2 slip stitch, and a second time. Then that second slip stitch we need to change back to white. Alright, we have another 8 white strands to make. So chain 4 in white, and then 2 slip stitch. Alright, so here's my last strand in white. And then I'm going to pull through with black. And then pull the tail through to tie a little knot. This time we only have 1 strand in black. So here's the second slip stitch. Cut a tail. Pull back through with white, and then bring that white tail through to tie a knot and fasten on. Alright, now we have 11 of these strands to make in white. Alright, so here's my last strand of that 11 white back to back. And then we have just 1 more strand of black left to make. So one last time, trim your white. Attach on to this next slip stitch with black. Pull the little tail through the loop. Tighten down. And then make that last chain 4 and slip stitch in black. And then we're gonna cut the black and reattach on with white. Alright, so that was the last black strand that we need to make. So for all of the remaining loops here, we're gonna just be chaining 4 and then slip stitching in the next 2 in white. So chain 4, Slip stitch in the next 2. So we're going to just keep repeating that pattern until we have spiraled all the way around and are here where we fastened off and sewed that last round closed. So I will see you back here whenever I have reached that point and ready to fasten off and then get all of these tails woven in. Alright, so I am almost all the way around here. I'm going to chain 4 and then make my last 2 slip stitches in these last 2 loops left on the surface of the body. And then I'm ready to fasten off and then get all of these tails woven in. So we'll cut a medium length tail here on the white, pull that last slip stitch until the tail passes through and then tighten down. And then let's start here at the front and work our way back on how to get these tails woven in. So let's start with the black tail from when we first fastened on here. And the tails are pretty easy to weave in. There's just a few of them, so we'll thread the tail through the eye of our tapestry needle. And then we're just going to send it into the body and out through just any old place, doesn't matter where. Pull tight and trim. So there's that first one, and then the remainder of all of these tails are grouped in 2s. There's going to be 1 white and 1 black. So let's weave them both in at the same time. So I like to start by trimming so that they're the same length, and then get them both through the eye of my needle, and then just send them into the body and out through any old place. Unthread and trim. So we're just going to continue working our way around, grabbing where there are 2 tails, trimming them so that they are the same length, threading them both through the eye of our tapestry needle, and weaving them both in. So let's just keep weaving these tails in. Alright, so I have all of the tails woven in. I just have this very last one here at the back. And there's no 2, just the 1 white tail to weave in. Alright, and that is the body done. So let's move on to the next part of the pattern. Alright, so next up we need to make the horns, and I'll show you how to make one, and we'll need to make a second and then attach them to the body. So we're going to be working in this light brown yarn and beginning with another magic ring. Alright, so now that we have that magic ring formed, we're ready to start in on round 1, where we need to put 4 single crochet stitches inside. Alright, now that I have those 4 single crochet stitches inside, I can pull the tail to close off round 1. And I'm ready for round 2, where we're starting with 1 increase in the first stitch of the round. Alright, so there's that first increase, and then I'm going to put 1 single crochet stitch in the remaining 3 stitches of the round. And you have to really encourage that horn to push the right direction. Alright, that's round 2 done. Round 3, I'm going to again start with 1 increase. And then put 1 single crochet stitch in the next 4 stitches of the round. Alright, that's round 3 done. And then round 4, which is the last round of the horn, we're going to put 1 single crochet stitch in each stitch all the way around. Alright, so that's round 4 done. I'm ready to fasten off, so I can take that stitch marker out and slip stitch in the stitch it was just in. And leave a tail to sew with. And then we're going to pull that last slip stitch long until the tail passes through, and then tighten down. Then we're also going to trim this magic ring tail. And that is one of the horns made. Let's make one more and then we can get it attached to the body. Alright, so I have both of my horns crocheted and I'm ready to get them attached to the body. So we'll start with one and get the tail that we reserved threaded through the eye of our tapestry needle. And then we're going to be attaching the horns onto the top of the body here, and they're going to be on round 8. So let's count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So it's going to be the spaces between the first 2 rounds of hair and the rest of the body. And then they're going to be sewn on angled so that they angle away from where the eyes are. So the horns aren't going to get stuffed. We're actually going to flatten them and be sewing through both layers of fabric as we get them attached. So I'm going to push the strands of hair aside and then slot the horn down in between those strands. And then to sew the horn on, I'm going to grab some of the fabric of the head and then sew through both layers of the horn, and then just continue sewing through the fabric of the head, being really careful not to sew through any of the hairs until we have sewn the horn on all the way across. Alright, so once you've sewn all the way across on the horn, we need to make sure that our tail is coming out of the fabric of the head, and then we can tie a surface knot and weave this tail into the body. Then we're going to send the tail into the body and out through a stitch. And then trim. Be really careful not to cut any of the hair. And that is one of the horns attached. Let's repeat with the other horn on the other side. Alright, so there are both of the horns attached, and I'm ready to move on to the next part of my pattern, which are the ears. So we need to make one in white and one in black, but they're made the exact same way. So I'll walk you through how to make the first one in white yarn, and then we're going to need to come back and make the second one in black, and then we can get them attached. So for the ears, we're going to begin by forming a magic ring. And then the only round is round 1 of the ear, and we're just going to put 7 single crochet stitches in our magic ring. Alright, so there are those 7 single crochet stitches. I'll pull the tail, and then we're ready to fasten off. We'll slip stitch to the first single crochet stitch that we made. Then we can cut a tail to sew with, and then I like to pull both the tail and the magic ring tail through that last stitch, and then just keep pulling until both tails pass through, and then tighten down on the tail that we just trimmed, the longer of the two. Alright, so that is one of the ears done in white. Let's make one more in black and then get them attached. Alright, so I have one black ear and one white ear, and I'm going to start by attaching the black ear. So the black ear is going to go on the side that has the black patch here on the face. And the ears are going to be attached on round 8, the same round we had our horns attached on. And they're going to go just below where the horns are. So let's start by threading the shorter tail from where we made our magic ring through the eye of our tapestry needle. And I'm going to weave this tail in by sending it straight into the head here, about 2 stitches below where the horn is, and then out through a stitch on the body. Then I can unthread that tapestry needle, and that gets that tail woven in and also holds the ear in place, which makes it easier to sew on. So then I'm going to thread the longer of those 2 tails through the eye of my tapestry needle, and then I'm going to use that tail to sew the ear onto the head. So I'm going to grab, being careful not to get any of the hair, some of the fabric of the head here, and then sew through the fabric of the ear. And I'll do that a few more times, just really securing the ear to the head. Alright, so making sure the tail that I just finished sewing with is coming out of the head, we're going to tie a surface knot, and then be careful not to get any of the hair. And then we're going to weave this tail in as well, and out through any stitch in the body. And you can see that gets the ear attached over onto this side. And then we can trim these 2 tails, the one that we just wove through and the magic ring tail. And that gets the first ear attached, so we need to repeat on the other side with the white ear, weaving in both the magic ring tail and sewing the ear on with the longer tail. Alright, you can see I have both of the ears attached, and I'm ready to move on to the next part of my pattern, which is to make the nose. So we're going to be working with this pink colored yarn, and we need to begin by tying a slip knot and getting some stitches chained. So let's review how to form a slip knot, and then we can start in on the nose. Alright, so let's review how to tie a slip knot and how to form a chain stitch. So we're going to take our yarn, and I'm using white for this demonstration, so just double check you're using the correct color from your pattern. And we're going to reserve ourselves a little bit of a tail, just like we do with our magic ring. So I'm going to take maybe 5 or 6 inches or so of my working yarn here, make myself a little tail. And then we're going to take that tail and we're going to wrap it behind our working yarn. So we're sort of making like a lowercase letter B. So once we've got that wrapped around, we formed this loop here. We're going to kind of sandwich the working yarn with the tail. So bring it back around and kind of cross it over that loop. Sort of like a pretzel twist. Then when we've done that, what we need to do is draw this twist that we've just done, that strand, through this loop without pulling the tail all the way through, because that would just tie a knot. So I take my hook hand, which is my right hand, and I grab what I've laid over that loop and pull it. And then with my other hand, I grab my working yarn and then pull the loop through. And the reason I form my slip knots this way is because they tighten when you pull on the tail, but not when you pull on the working yarn. It won't tighten while you're trying to add stitches to it. So once you've got that slip knot formed, you're going to take your hook and slip it inside of the slip knot, and then pull the tail to tighten it into a loop down onto your hook. Then you're ready to begin tensioning by laying the working yarn over your yarn index finger. So for me, that's my left index finger. and then wrapping the rest of your fingers around our working yarn. And then I like to hold on to the slip knot itself with my middle and thumb on my yarn hand. And then we're ready to form a chain. So to chain, we'll take our hook and we're going to yarn over, meaning we're going to put the yarn over our hook, and then draw the working yarn through the slip knot we tied, and then pull up to form a nice tall loop. So that's our first chain. To continue chaining, we're going to just keep yarning over and drawing a nice tall loop through each time. One final thing though, the loop on your hook, as I'm sure I may have mentioned in the video before, that doesn't count as a stitch. This is sort of like a stitch in progress. So right now I have 2 chain stitches formed. I'll yarn over and draw another stitch through. That'll be 3, 4. And as you add chain stitches, I tend to move my middle and my thumb up closer to my hook to help me sort of tension my yarn a little easier. So as I chain, I just keep shifting my hand down the stitches that I've just created. Alright, so that's how you tie a slip knot and chain. Alright, so now that we've reviewed how to form a slip knot and how to make a chain stitch, we are ready to go ahead and begin round 1, where we're going to begin by chaining 5 stitches. Alright, so with those first 5 chains created, I'm going to start in the second chain for my hook, so we don't count the one here on our hook. So 1, 2, and in this first, or the second chain for my hook, I'm going to place an increase. I'm going to mark the first stitch that I just made, and then make the second part of that increase. Then I'm going to place 1 single crochet stitch in the next 2 chains. So 1 single crochet stitch, 2 single crochet stitches, and then in that last chain, which is our slip knot, I'm going to place 3 single crochet stitches. So here's my first. Alright, so now that I have all 3 of those single crochet stitches in that last chain, which is my slip knot, I'm going to pull it tight to close it off and then weave that tail in as I flip around and work down the other side of this chain. So I'm going to place 1 single crochet stitch in each of the 3 chains down the other side here. So I'll go through that first one and lay the tail from my slip knot over my crochet hook as well. So there's my first single crochet stitch. Here's my last. Alright, and then I'm ready to slip stitch to that first stitch of the round. So I'll take that stitch marker out and then slip stitch. And then chain 1 to start my next round, which is round 2. So in this first stitch here of the round, we're going to place 1 increase and then mark that first single crochet stitch we just made, and then finish our increase. Then in the next stitch we need to place another increase, so 2 increases, then 1 single crochet stitch in the next 2 stitches of the round, then 1 increase in the next 3 stitches, then 1 single crochet stitch in the next 2 stitches of the round, followed by 1 increase, And then we're going to slip stitch to that chain 1 that we made at the beginning, or the end of last round. So slip stitch into that chain 1, and then chain 1 more stitch. And that sets us up for round 3, which is the last round of the nose, where we're going to put 1 single crochet stitch in every stitch all the way around. Alright, so I'm all the way around. I'm going to slip stitch into that chain 1 from the end of last round. And then I'm ready to fasten off. So I need to trim a tail to sew with. I'm going to take my stitch marker out and leave myself probably 12 to 14 inches of tail to sew with. And then pull that last slip stitch through and tighten it down. And then we can trim the tail that we wove in from our slip knot. And we need to add a little stuffing to the inside of the nose here. Alright, so I have the nose stuffed and I'm ready to get it attached to the body. So the nose is going to get attached right below where the eyes are. And we're going to use the tail to sew all the way around the nose. Alright, so I'm going to just grab a little fabric from the head and then sew up through one of the last round stitches. And then just continue working my way around, sewing the nose on until it is all the way attached. Alright, so I have sewn all the way around the nose and I'm ready to fasten off. So I'm going to tie a surface knot here, right on the corner of the nose. And then I'm going to weave this tail into the head and out through a stitch on the other side. And then being careful not to trim any of the hair, trim this tail. And that is the nose attached. So let's move on to the next part of our pattern. Alright, next up we need to make the legs. So we need to make 2. I'll show you how to make the first, and then you need to make the second, and we can sew them on together. So we're working with this white colored yarn, starting with another magic ring. Alright, with that magic ring formed, I'm ready for round 1, where we're going to put 6 single crochet stitches inside. Once you have all 6 single crochet stitches, you can pull the tail to close off round 1. And we're ready for round 2, starting with 1 single crochet stitch in the first stitch of the round. And then 1 increase. And we'll repeat that 2 more times. Alright, that's round 2 done. I'm going to pull my magic ring tail tight one last time and then give it a trim. That'll keep it out as our, and that will keep it out of our way as we work the last round, which is round 3. We're just going to put 1 single crochet stitch in each stitch all the way around. Alright, there's that last single crochet stitch. I'm ready to fasten off. I'll take my stitch marker out and slip stitch in the stitch it was just in. And then reserve myself a long tail to sew with. 9 inches or so ought to be enough. And then draw that last slip stitch until the tail passes through and tighten. So that's one of the legs done. Let's make one more and get them attached to the body. Alright, so I have both of the legs done and I'm ready to get them attached. So we're going to start by flattening the leg. And just like we did with the horns, we're going to sew through both layers of fabric as we attach. We'll take the tail that we've cut and thread it through the eye of our tapestry needle. And these are going to get attached to the body around round 7 or so, which is just behind this first ruffle of hair. And they're going to be about 2 stitches apart, so I'm going to line them up with the eyes and kind of wedge them into that layer between. And then we'll sew them on just like we did with the horns. We'll sew into some of the fabric of the body. Careful not to snag any of the hair. And then we'll sew through both layers of the leg. We're just going to continue working our way across until the leg is fully attached. Alright, so I've sewn all the way across, and I'm going to make sure that my tail is coming out of the fabric of the body, and then I'll tie my surface knot and weave the tail in. Alright, that gets one of the legs attached. Let's repeat with the other leg on the other side. Alright, so I have both of the legs attached and I'm ready to move on in my pattern with the arms. So we need to make 2 of them. I'll walk you through how to make the first, and just like with the legs and the horns and the ears, you'll have to make the second and then we can sew them on together. So we're working with white and beginning with another magic ring. Alright, so I have my magic ring formed. I'm going to place 5 single crochet stitches inside. Alright, there are all 5 of my single crochet stitches. I'll pull my tail. And then for rounds 2, 3, and 4, we're going to just put 1 single crochet stitch in each stitch all the way around. So I'll catch you back here whenever I've finished round 4 and we're ready to fasten off. Alright, so I just made my last single crochet stitch in round 4. I'm going to fasten off by slip stitching to the next stitch. And then you need to cut a tail to sew with, and then pull that last slip stitch till the tail passes through. And if you haven't already, go ahead and give your magic ring tail a trim. And that wraps up one of the arms. Let's make one more and then get them attached. Alright, so I have both of the arms made, and just like with the ears, and just like with the horns and the legs, we're going to sew them on by flattening them and sewing through both layers with the tail. So let's get that tail threaded through the eye of our tapestry needle, and then we're going to attach them on here on the side of the body, sort of even with the nose, and so that they are pointing forward. And we'll just sew them on in that same layer here by grabbing some of the fabric of the body and then both layers of the arm. Once you've sewn it all the way on, make sure your tail is coming out of the fabric of the head, and we'll tie a surface knot. And weave that tail in. And trim. Alright, so that's one of the arms. Let's repeat with the other arm on the other side. Alright, so I have both arms attached, and that wraps up this tutorial.